Why don't we get started, everyone? Congressman Cuellar is here, so we want to get started. Okay, welcome. Welcome to everyone in the room and everyone on the call via Zoom. We really appreciate you all being here with us today. I think it's a really historic meeting for us here, and we have a good agenda. I'm going to just briefly outline the agenda. Congressman Cuellar, who's already here, is going to speak to us. Congressman Arrington's going to speak to us afterwards. We have Frank Luntz, who's zooming in from the UK. After that, we'll cover some logistics about this afternoon because we have HIL meetings, and most of you here in the room have been assigned to HIL meetings. If you haven't been and you'd like to, please let me know. If you've been assigned and you want to be reassigned to something else, let me know. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Congressman Cuellar is from Texas. We have many families in Texas.
I just met a Texan a while ago.
So Mike Lunsford, who I assume is on the phone from Mary Kay, has been very helpful. And we really appreciate all your help and your work and co-sponsoring our rate reduction bill in the House, reducing the rate from 40% to 20% for gift, estate, and generation skipping tax. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for being here today. And we're very interested in hearing what you have to say. So Russ, did you want to add something to that?
I did, as a Texan, I just want to
Here.
Congressman Cuellar is the kind of Democrat that we'd like to elect more of in Congress. He really is a guy who understands all kinds of businesses. He understands what kind of businesses you all do, the impact you have on your communities. He's fighting for making our climate cleaner, but he's doing it in a way that preserves jobs. He understands the importance of entrepreneurs who will take risks and then use that to take care of their workers, their families, and their communities. And that's why he's supporting what we're doing, and we're going to work to try to help him broaden the reach of the number of Democrats who will support us and support the initiatives that you all are doing in your area. So thank you, Congressman.
Thank you so much to my fellow Texan and to any wannabe Texans. Good morning to all of y'all. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm here with my chief of staff. If you have any questions, I'll take all the easy questions. Jake Hopberg will take all the hard questions. But I do want to just say a few things. I know you got different things to cover, but let me just tell you what's happening in the Hill. Everything is in flux. So whatever you hear probably will change. I was just talking to the White House driving up here. As you know, there's an issue not between Democrats and Republicans. There's an issue between the progressives and the centrists like myself. As you know, right now, the big issue is, do we have the votes to support and pass the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which I think will be important for the U.S. Right now, everybody's trying to use leverage because the Senate, you need all 50 senators if it's going to be a reconciliation. In the House, as you know, there's about a 3-vote difference. So everybody thinks they have leverage, and everybody's trying to use that leverage right now. So right now, it's a gamemanship of leverage. Everything is a leverage part. Like yesterday, you had the progressives. We were doing the stopgap bill, and there was money there for the Iron Dome, and the progressives didn't want it. So it was taken off, but we said, well, we're just going to add it in the appropriations defense bill, which I'm a member of that subcommittee. We'll just add it there. But I say that because everybody's trying to use the leverage right now. So right now, the big thing that we're looking at is the bipartisan bill that we have on infrastructure that's supposed to be voted on Monday. And then, of course, the reconciliation, which I do support. I don't agree with the amount of money. I was not in the room when somebody said $3.5 trillion is a magical number. I don't know who came up with that number. I don't like the pay-fors. For example, I led a letter saying, hey, you just can't attack the oil and gas industry by those targeted tax increases. If you're going to treat everybody should be treated the same. Don't target the people you don't like. I think that's very unfair. So there are some issues about the pay-fors. There are some provisions we might have a problem with. So those are the things that we need to work out. So right now, it's the bipartisan bill that we have on infrastructure that's supposed to be on the vote Monday, the 27th. And then, of course, the reconciliation. And I think the reconciliation is what y'all should be looking at. And I'm sure you all are looking at, because there might be some provisions that might be favorable, or there be some provisions that might not be favorable, or there might be some, and that includes pay-fors, that certainly might not be favorable to some of the people that you all represent. And as you know, the reconciliation, it's a political, well, it's a procedure, but it's when the Republicans are there, Republicans vote on it, and Democrats vote no. When the Democrats are there, Democrats vote yes, and then Republicans vote no. And that's what we're looking at right now. So anything dealing with estate tax or anything dealing with any other type of pay-fors is in flux right now till it's worked out. Now, I'm a part of a group of 9, and I'll tell you how I got in. I was actually in Cuernavaca with my family. So Josh sent me a note, hey, can you sign this letter? And I said, what does it do? And it said, well, it's just getting a date on the bipartisan bill. So yeah, that sounds good. I'll sign on. Then when I got back, I started paying attention to the issue. I said, well, I think we need to add something else, because in 2009, 2010, when the Democrats, when we were in charge at that time, I saw that we took some votes. And as you know, a lot of times, we might do something and the Senate might do something else, and we end up over here. And I saw how a lot of our blue dogs got wiped out because they took some votes that they should have not taken. So when I got back, I told the group of 9, I think we need to add another provision to our letter, and that is whatever we pass in the House has to be approved by the Senate. That is not approved, but it has to have the support of all 50 senators. Not only Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, but you need to have people like Joe Manchin, Krista Sinema, and the more moderate individuals. So that way we can have something the same, and we don't do a ping pong game. We actually have something that would be more moderated by the moderates in the House and the moderates in the Senate. So that, that became part, and I think it's probably now the most important thing, because I was using experience of what I saw in 2009, 2010. So that has become a big part of it. As you know, talking about those 2 bills, the bills are basically, the progressives want to put both of them together. I think they should be, uncoupled. They should not be together. So now this is how we're trying to get to this point, is how do we vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill when the progressives are saying no? And then, what do we do about the reconciliation? There's no way the reconciliation is going to be ready by Monday. Absolutely no way. So that is what we're looking at. On top of that, I said on the defense appropriations, homeland, and ag approps subcommittees on appropriations, usually the big bill is the appropriations. And now, because of all this, we've become secondary for a moment, and then we'll come back again. So as you know, yesterday we had a stopgap, a CR, to pass it on to later. As you know, I don't understand why Congress doesn't pass the bills like we're supposed to before September 30th. And so we can start a fiscal year on the 1st, but it's always passed on to December. And then the other thing was the debt ceiling that we had. And I always find the debt ceiling funny, how political parties look at this. Again, I'm not attacking anybody, but, when Trump was there, Mitch McConnell had the majority. They were saying, oh, we got to do the debt, raise the debt ceiling. It's the right thing to do. Otherwise, our economy is going to tank. And now, of course, they're saying, oh, no, you Democrats have to handle that. And it's, to me, I just find it hilarious how political parties always, members will vote on who's in office. And to me, the debt ceiling, it's not to encourage you to pay more, but it's to pay the debt, including whatever was spent under Trump administration, Obama administration, Bush administration, Clinton. It goes on for years and years and years. But I do worry about the debt because we're paying about $300 billion in interest a year, and some of it is to foreign countries without mentioning the names, but I think you're familiar with China and other countries that are involved. So we do have to get to address that. So anyway, that is a quick summary of what we're looking at. I'll just say this. People have a tendency of looking at Democrats, feeling that they're not pro-energy or pro rural areas or pro-business. There are a lot of us that are pro-business. I can tell you that. So don't paint all of us with the same paintbrush. There are a lot of Democrats that are very pro-business, and sometimes there are Democrats more pro-business than Republicans are. Remember the Import-Export Bank that the Republicans kept blocking on that? I mean, that was good for business. And so again, when you look at members of Congress, both House and Senate, don't paint us with the same paintbrush. Get to know us, get to talk to us, and you'll see that a lot of us are pro-business, pro-energy, pro-trade. I took a big lead on NAFTA, what I call NAFTA 2.0, or U.S., Mexico, Canada. We still got to worry about some of the things happening. I don't know if any of y'all represent some of the energy companies. I don't like what Mexico's doing. A lot of people are focused on the border, but it's what the Mexican government is doing. They're slowly squeezing our energy companies over there in Mexico. And those are the things that we need to look at, what's happening over there if y'all represent anybody that's doing business in Mexico in the energy sector. So anyway, those are some of the issues. I didn't get on talking about the border because that would take us probably another 30, 40 minutes. So I'll be happy to answer any quick questions or if you have any comments. I'd love to hear input on what you all are thinking. Yes, sir.
First of all, Congressman, thanks for bringing common sense to all these dialogues. It gets lost in translation.
It does.
On the state tax in the Democratic Party, I was just curious, obviously, for all family businesses, it impacts us dramatically, and there's talks about changes in exemptions and rates and offsets to closeouts. And so, what is your sense of what's happening on your side?
Yeah, and that's still in flux right now. And as you know, folks, I think you're all going to hear from Jody. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jody and myself and other folks are working on that because we are concerned. In my area, I mean, it affects the whole country, but in my area, especially our farmers and our ranchers, I got three big industries: trade, oil and gas, in the rural areas. And, I talked to a lot of my rural folks about the estate tax or the death tax on it. So right now it's in flux. We are doing letters. I know I let letters on certain issues to Richie Neal. So if we can communicate with you and talk to Richie, I know Richie's being pulled left and right to come up with the money for 3.5, but I keep saying it's not going to be 3.5. I don't know who agreed to 3.5. I can bet anybody here it's not going to be 3.5 trillion. I don't know what amount. I think you've heard my friend Senator Joe Manchin yesterday, and of course, I saw him yesterday, but he and I have had a lot of communications, and it's not going to be 3.5. Krista Sinema, I've talked to Senator Sinema, it's not going to be 3.5. Some of us don't want to see a 3. I don't know who came up with that number. Somebody told me, but it was $10 trillion or $9 trillion or $6 trillion. Why it could have been 20 trillion? It doesn't matter. I don't know who came up with that number. So even on the taxes, we got to be careful with, the pay-fors on that. So, no, but I can tell you I am looking out for a couple industries or a couple of provisions, and the estate tax is one.
Well, we really appreciate that. We really appreciate your protection of family businesses, which are so important to this economy. If you had to guess in terms of the timing, and I know it's a guess, what do you see? You say nothing's going to happen by Monday on the budget.
Well, that was the only prediction I was going to make. It's not going to happen. After that, who knows? Look, we don't know. As you know, we're in session, at least the House side, this week and next week. I don't think it'll be done next week. I think we'll come back probably in October. But the whole thing has to be, and this is what, if you see what the House was doing, the House committee, the instructions they got was, hey, House committees kick that. So they kicked out a lot of stuff. And I've looked at some of it and I don't agree with everything. So they kicked something out, but then what I pushed for was, hey, it's not vote on what the House has. It's got to be what can 50 senators plus one, but the 50 senators can agree. So whatever the House has here, it's going to be moderated. So how fast they can do that? Like I was talking to a senator, no names mentioned, but he told the Senate leader, says, hey, you sound like you got all the votes. I said, and this is what he told me. I thought it was pretty funny. He says, do you have a Republican on board? Because you don't have me on. So this is what's going to get complicated because there's high expectations on behalf of the progressives on the House side. And somehow, and I know leadership is trying to slowly temper down expectations that it's not going to be at 3.5. It's going to be somewhere down here. So then it'll be interesting to see what the progressives will say, because in their mind, they're at 3.5 no matter what. But the leadership, our leadership, and I'm part leadership, but I'm talking about the top three people, has to somehow temper this high expectations. Look, the way I see the reconciliation, it's a remaking in many ways of the safety net that we have. But I don't want to see cost be the main driver. I don't want to see duplication be another driver on this. And that's, the cost is what's driving a lot of it. Some people feel the more money you spend, the more of a job we do. And I think that's the wrong perspective. They ought to focus on what we're trying to address. I mean, if you look at the reconciliation anyway, they're trying to remake, we're trying to look at a remake of the safety net in so many ways. And so anyway, I can't answer your question. I don't think nobody knows when, but it's not going to be Monday. That's a sure thing. I think.
Well, we're, the proposal that came out of Ways and Means, we're concerned. We're happy that it doesn't include elimination of step up in basis, because that's a really big deal for family businesses and families.
Let me interrupt you. I've talked to a lot of business groups. Actually, what came out from Neil's committee, the Ways and Means, it's not as bad as some people expected. I mean, some people, of course, if you have any change, it's bad. But there were certain things like, I'll use the oil and gas industry. They said, ooh, it's not as bad as we expected. I mean, they still don't like certain things in there, but it's in many ways, it's not as bad as some people expected. I mean, I know that's a matter of perspective, but like you said, didn't include this, but it included this and all.
Well, and we're happy that it doesn't include elimination of step up, but unfortunately, it reduces the exemption, which helps all small businesses in half, and that's at the end of this year, which is disastrous. It makes these changes to grantor trusts, which family businesses all use.
The grantor trust is a big one,
It's a big one that pass their businesses on to the next generation. So we're really concerned about some of those provisions, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but we're hoping that between the House and the Senate, some of those will go away, because it's going to be very, very destructive to family businesses.
And I understand and I agree with you. There will be some of us, and I've had some Republicans and say, hey, you got to help us with this and this. Because, at the end of the day, they're going to be voting no. Then some of us, it's more, as I mentioned, reconciliation becomes a political thing. It's a policy, but it's a political. Democrats are in power, it's decided by Democrats. Republicans in power, it's only decided by Republicans. It's just the nature of the thing. But there will be some of us that if we can put enough pressure to say, hey, make that change, both in the House and the Senate, so you got to have I don't know if y'all spoken to the more moderate people like Joe Manchin and a couple other folks. And sometimes, usually people just look at Joe Manchin and Sinema, but there's actually some other Democrats that you can talk to.
Yeah.
I mean, I spend a lot of time with Senator Joe Manchin and with Sinema because I know both of them well and talk to them frequently. But there might be other Democrats, and that's one of the things I need to ask Senator Manchin about. Hey, I hate to call you every 2 minutes, but here, especially in the Senate, every vote counts. So if somebody says, I don't want this, and they hold on to it, it's not going to be part of it.
Well, to your point, I think Senator Hickenlooper understands, staff understands.
Good.
His concern. So
Well, he was at my event yesterday. So we had an event there with Ben Levine and other folks, and Senator John Hickenlooper was there. So I'll talk to him.
Okay.
So is the staff understands, but the senator,
Yes.
is he okay?
we think, I mean, Russ, you have a better perspective than I do, but we have very good discussions with the staff.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to John about that, or Senator Hickenlooper.
Questions for the Congressman? Brandon?
So just comments. First, just thank you for your leadership on the State Tax Rate Reduction Act, the bill we've been pursuing, and even with actually very co-sponsors, Jane and Patrick have been sponsors. So to that end, just looking at one of the battles we're fighting is trying to, in some way, fully eliminate the state tax and getting there through elimination of the rate. And so whether you might have suggestions as to potential other House Democrats, and that not try to suggest that actually sign your name with that. So, do you have any suggestions as to House Democrats?
Yeah, and as you know, the bill that you mentioned, that bills are hard to pass nowadays in Congress, so you have to find a train that's moving. So we got to talk about the trains that have to pass. I mean, there's some bills that have to pass, appropriation bills, NDAA, reconciliation. Well, it doesn't have to pass, but it probably will be pushed to pass. So we definitely look at vehicles that have to pass. I always say, where do you put your luggage on? What train is moving? What train is going to stop here? What train is going to go all the way up there? So we certainly will work with you on that. With that, if there's no other question, I know
Any other
y'all
questions?
are very busy.
Mitch?
Yes.
If some of these provisions will be find problematic, we're going to be advocating that they not be included, but for some reason, there are portions that will be included. We would recommend that they be targeted. Right now, the provisions, whether grant or trust or discounts, for example, it's just more hitting them with the sledgehammer, basically. If there are specific issues, abuses that are perceived abuses that need to be addressed, and that's something I would recommend that we consider rather than just hitting the entire area.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Yes, sir.
I would agree.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hey, and reconciliation, I hate to say that, but that's why I love bipartisan items, because the bipartisan things that pass are lasting. When it's purely on a straight vote, like the affordable health care, Democrat passed it, and then Republicans try to repeal it. And on reconciliation, if there's changing on taxes, then when the next political party's in power, then they'll come back and refine things or readjust things. And that doesn't call for very good estate planning, long term, because
Right.
you got this, or this is going to take effect this December or whatever. I mean, it's terrible for business planning, for estate planning on that. But you're right on that part. With that, I want to say thank you so much. I'm sorry it's one of those busy days, but I do want to thank you very, very much. And again, the only thing I ask you is, don't paint everybody with the same paintbrush. If you take away from me, please remember that on that. But otherwise, so Luntz is in France and in England. What time is it in England right now? See,
It's 8-hour time difference, so I don't, he's always all over.
Oh, he's
so I
all
never
over the
worry
thing. I
about
know.
it.
I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine, and he was calling me from Spain. I said, "Hey, isn't it about almost 2 o'clock in the morning? Aren't you supposed to be asleep? He says, I can't go to sleep. I'm still on Texas time. I said, okay. But anyway, y'all, thank you so much. Yes. Bye. See y'all later. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
Okay, so we are waiting for Congressman Arrington right now. And so what I'd like to do is, Darius, if you could put up on the screen for me one of the slides I sent you. It's called Expanded Strategic Focus. And I assume someone is tracking Arrington downstairs. Since we talked to Congressman Cuellar about what's included in this bill, I just wanted to remind all of you on the phone and in the room that we this year, Policy and Taxation Group, has expanded their focus around issues a little broader than just repeal of gift, estate, and generation skipping tax. Of course, that's what we were founded for in 1995, and we will continue to always work for elimination of gift, estate, and generation skipping tax. But this is a very difficult year in which we are fighting back against elimination of step up, as I just talked about with the congressman. Okay. Which is very, very important. We may have won on that. We're not ready to celebrate, but that's with a lot of hard work on our part and other organizations like the National Farm Bureau as well, who we met with yesterday. Reducing the lifetime exemption, the proposal right now is to reduce it back to almost 5 million, and that would be effective December of this year. So that is horrendous for a lot of business owners and small business owners, and particularly increase in the rate is absolutely a possibility. Loss evaluation discounts is included in this proposal for liquid assets. So if you haven't read the proposal and it's a little complicated and it's a little vague, they are really eliminating valuation discounts for assets that are liquid in nature. And a lot of family businesses actually have partnerships in which they put non-liquid or liquid assets for lots of reasons to pass that business in of itself, a liquid business, onto the next generation.
That it's not just liquid assets per se, it's basically non-controlling interest essentially in non-operating type.
Non-operating businesses, good point, right. It can be other than liquid assets. Yeah, thanks, Mitch, that's a good point. But valuation discounts, we've been fighting for decades, and they're really important to our families, so we really need to stay on that. Increase in capital gains, we know that's in the proposal. It's going up to 25%, and then there's surtaxes on top of that. So that's very, very difficult, especially if step up in basis was eliminated. You put a capital gains tax on top of that, you could get to almost an 80% tax. And then increase in income tax, that really affects all of our pass-through entities, which most family businesses, many families operate through LLCs, LPs, S-corps, so those pass-through entities. So once again, and in this legislation, there are provisions around 199A, reducing those deductions for those pass-through organizations that we absolutely need to pay attention to. And then, of course, we've got the establishment of a wealth tax that seems to have legs. And then our offensive position, these are all our defensive positions, is advocating for this rate reduction bill that Congressman Cuellar and Congressman Arrington have both introduced for us in the House and in the Senate. We have senators from Arkansas, Boozman and Cotton introduced in the Senate, which is not bipartisan. So I really want everyone to understand that we've not only expanded our focus and our strategy, we've expanded our budget, we've expanded our roles with both of our law firms, Squire Patton Boggs, as well as the Brownstein Law Firm here, who's kind enough to host us today. And thank you all at the Brownstein Law Firm for your support and your help. It's been amazing. And so we really, really have to push back. And we really have a bigger budget to do that. we have to spend more time, and we have to spend a lot more energy. I think this is one of the most difficult years that I have worked on this issue since working on it for 25 years now. So I just I really appreciate all of your support here in the room as well as on the phone. So does anybody, the congressman is here, he's on his way up. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Totally open. Ernie, you don't have a question or a comment?
Wait till Russ tells us what the Democrats are going to do.
It's got a good story.
Pat, do you have enough resources?
Is that Mary Myers I hear on the phone?
Yes, it is, Pat. Good morning to you and all. Sorry I'm not there in person, but my question is, do you have sufficient resources, money, and manpower to wage the battle that you just described?
We do have, I would say, sufficient resources, but we need more resources. And if we have time today, I'm going to share with everyone where I think we can spend additional resources and do better, more work. I hope I have time to share that. If not, I will share it with the board after this meeting today. But I have been working with John Gugliana and John Marino on coming up with ideas, thanks to your great question, Mary, at the board, which is, if you had more resources, where would you spend it? Mary is always challenging us and thank God she is, because she has some really great ideas. And I've done a lot of thinking about that. So since I mentioned John Marino and John Gugliana, I just really want to thank both of them for coming on board. And you're in the room, so John Gugliana, will you stand up? And John Marino, will you stand up so everybody knows who you are? So John Gugliana is Director of Strategic Partnerships and Business Development for Family Enterprise USA, and John Marino is Director of Strategic Partnerships and Business Development for Policy and Taxation Group. They have really relieved me of a lot of the business development work. They've been excellent in terms of their organization and follow through. They do more of that than I've ever done. They're using our database system, Zoho, in an amazing manner, in ways I didn't even know we could use it. So it has really helped elevate our efforts in both organizations. And I will remind you that we have Policy and Taxation Group is a 501c4. We are the lobbying organization on gift, estate, and generation skipping tax and elimination of those taxes. Family Enterprise USA is a 501c3. Sole purpose is to promote family businesses and their job growth in America. You can see the synergy between the two organizations and the overlap, because family businesses' number one concern in many years that we do our survey is elimination of gift, estate, and generation skipping tax. So Policy and Taxation Group can help in those efforts, because that is, again, the sole focus and direction for Policy and Taxation Group. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands they are two separate organizations. Again, Family Enterprise USA is a 501c3. Policy and Taxation Group is a 501c4. They work together. They have separate boards. Some of you in the room here are on both of those boards or singularly on those boards. And you know, and I run both organizations with the help of the team from Brownstein, as well as Squire Patton Boggs, and now John Gugliana and John Marino. So really appreciate that. Looks like, Daniel, do you know the ETA of Congressman Arrington?
Brandon says they are en route.
They're en route.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought they were in the building. Of course, Russ Sullivan, Brownstein.
Just to tell you, on the way out, Congressman Cuellar and his chief of staff said, okay, once y'all have your meeting, come back to us and tell us which of these estate tax provisions are the most problematic. I'm probably not gonna be able to get all of them out, but I'll try to get some. So help prioritize. So we do have an opening for him to help us on the House side with Richie Neal, with Nancy Pelosi, to either trim back and modify or get rid of something. So.
Okay, so with that list,
our discussions today, we'll need to coalesce around what those are.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We should have time for discussion today. And so that list I just went through is exactly what Russ is talking about. We need to come up with, well, what are things that we can live with and what are things we can't live with? We're not going to get everything. And I know every one of them we all want, but we do need to prioritize, as he says. I think that's really important. And Russ, what I didn't mention to the congressman, I thought you would actually, is Senator Tester is another one that he should be talking to, right? So, I mean, the fact that Mark Warren back here with Brownstein, the fact that he was open to suggestions about that is really, really positive, and I think we really need to help him do that. So,
what is your sense of where Senator Hickenlooper is? Because he is more moderate, but is he just because he's the new guy, he's trying to play along, or?
Yeah, it's for Hickenlooper, it's a combination of he's new, he doesn't want to rock the boat too much, and Colorado is changing. When he started in politics, oil and gas was one of the leading industries in Colorado. It's still significant, but from a political perspective, that's not the group that elected him. It was the more progressives. And third, he's got Bennett, who's up for re-election, who's worried about a challenge from the left in the Democratic Party primary. And so Bennett's asking him not to be too moderate so that Bennett doesn't look too moderate in the primary. That's all behind the scenes, but that's what's really going on. So we're going to have to find some key advisors to Hickenlooper to get him to step out. I think it's one of those situations where intellectually he agrees with us, but practically he's reluctant to step out and be a leader.
yeah, and I would say that we, Daniel and I, Brownstein Law Firm, had a great conversation with his staff member who is a former state attorney who understands these issues really, really well. And so that's a real positive. And he appreciates our position, and I think he's kind of with us. But to Russ's point, that doesn't mean that the senator is going to vote with us. But the more we can get them to understand not just the technicalities of it, but the stories as well, which all of you need to help us with, the more likely it is we're going to get support. So I guess we have a few minutes. What I want to do before we run out of time today is I do want everybody to go around the room and introduce themselves, but I don't want to start into that when he's walking in the room. Does Brandon, anybody in communication with Brandon in terms of timing? He's outside? Oh, he's waiting for him.
He's waiting there, and Lori's downstairs waiting on the conference.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and start. We can just interrupt if he comes up here.
Okay. All right. All right. We're going to start with Brett. So introductions, and then please tell us, the company, the family, the state, where you're from. And that you're on the board of Policy and Taxation Group, Brett.
Yes, thank you, Pat. I am on the board of Policy and Taxation Group and have been working with Pat since prior to 1995, actually, when it was a different organization. I am based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and work for ELD Associates. It's a single family office. And I'm a CPA and work with them on estate planning and investments, tax returns, et cetera. So happy to be here yet again. Glad to be back in DC in person.
Okay, David.
And good morning. I'm David Plimpton with the Plimpton family, owners of Intellex. Likely have not heard of Intellex, but you've probably used our products a few times today. We're ingredients behind the label of cosmetic products, personal care products, shampoo, hair conditioning. And I like to say, if you're using Purell, pump twice. So in some notable brands and in luxury goods. Thank you. And on the board of Family Enterprise USA.
Good morning. My name is Vincent Hayes. I'm the global head of family office at Bank of New York Mellon. We serve over 300 families across the country. They're single family offices, and we've been doing that now for over 50 years within the bank. And we're continuing to focus on that and focus on growth and support our families as much as we can.
And BNY Mellon is a platinum sponsor, thank you very much,
Thank you.
of Family Enterprise USA. So we're happy to have them here today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Happy to support this cause.
Hi, my name is Ernie Pomelo from the Republic of Vermont. A family business, been around for 60 years, commercial developers, on the board with Pat and Brett Company, and been on since Frank and you were doing this back in the way days. So
Yeah.
this obviously, as many of us share, as a family business is, I lost a father at 100. So we just went through that a year ago. So been an interesting but passionate topic. So thank you.
Coy Martin, I work in Brett's office, ELD Associates. I'm the in-house lawyer, actually in Nashville, Tennessee. Been involved about 7 years in this since I joined the family office. So glad to be back.
John Marino, introduced me. I work for policy.
Can you speak up a little, John? It's hard back.
John Marino, policy and taxation. Pat introduced me already, and I'm based here in Washington, D.C.
I'm Angela Simmons. I'm the managing family member for ABS Legacy Partners, which is a single family office in North Carolina. My background, I'm a chartered financial analyst and spent almost 30 years working for an investment firm in Los Angeles, but retired there in December to focus on our family office. We're kind of a hybrid family office. We have a number of liquid assets and family limited partnerships, but we also have significant family businesses that are still in place. Very concerning given the these statements changes. Glad to be here.
I'm Lex Eterno from Key Foods Corporation. I'm fourth generation. I'm on the board of FUSA. We have around 6,000 employees, and we manufacture in 3 different states. And we like to make sure our employees are well taken care of and make sure they stay taxed and everything's going well, and hopefully fight against those things.
I'm Beth Vardy. I'm the Director of Shareholder Engagement at McKee Foods, best known for Little Debbie Snack Cakes, in case you all know. We're based right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, currently 3rd and 4th generation. Family members are running it, and I've spent I joined them last year. I'm an attorney this month and family business consultant, and have spent most of my time over the past year hearing about this organization and really trying to help them get ready for what they perceive as such a difficult time, and with the personal, the business challenges, staffing, and now all the tax challenges. Definitely very concerned among the family members about how to continue going forward and what they hope is a family business for many generations. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat, for the intro. John Gugliotta. I work with Pat, Family Enterprise. It's been about 6 or 7 months, but it's been a very interesting ride. I found that the folks I've been dealing with are just terrific. I love family business. My father had a family business, so this is quite a passionate enterprise for me. I really, deep down, love the dynamic. So I appreciate the fact that I'm involved in this. I thank all of you for being here.
Thanks, John. And I see the congressman is here, so. Congressman, great to see you again at Soldano.
Yeah, nice to see you.
See you. Thank you so much for coming. It is a serious group, isn't it?
I know we're in, I don't know what stage of are we in depression, denial, I'm in the stage of potential defeat of probably the worst piece of legislation to transform radically the greatest economy in the world and reimagine radically the role of government in our lives like I've never seen. And I went from all those stages to I smell victory on our end, defeat on their end, and lots of fracturing. And y'all know the provisions. I don't have to tell you. And if you're a big fan of killing the death tax, well, then join my family farmers in West Texas. Get in line because, it is the most un-American, most unfair tax in the code. And happens to be the highest, fourth highest in the state tax in the free world. So who would have thought they'd come after the 20%, the 199A deduction? Corporate rates are better, but still bad because it'll still fall with wages and higher cost of goods on the middle and working class people. That's what even the progressive or more liberal tax policy think tanks are telling them. Everybody's telling them. There's not a group out there that doesn't. That's the reality. Not to mention we won't be able to, we'll hamstring the home team when we're trying to get customers and market share around the world. So we went from 4,000 inversions to zero and $1.6 trillion coming back and a robust economy like gangbusters and 6 million people lifted out of poverty. I mean, everybody's boat rose on the tide of American prosperity thanks to tax cuts and regulatory relief. It's just freedom. In other words, it's just freedom. And this is quite the opposite. It's quite extraordinary that it would be loaded up with all the tax provisions on top of the tax on the everyman, every woman tax of inflation. Just hard to believe that somebody would sign up for that. I'm an NRCC deputy chair for the second time, which means I'm very focused on about 50 races, getting the gavel from Miss Pelosi and making America great again. If we can save and dial back or even save altogether this train that's coming down the track, it's the tax and spend deal. It is so loaded and so extensive, it's hard to know where to start and stop. It's like the eating the elephant analogy. But the expansion of the government in all the many ways that I think will be mostly permanent, because there's not a Republican that I know of that will have the guts to reverse this once you put, for example, $500 billion in the cash entitlement with no work requirement, which is the refundable child tax credit. That's just one of them. So we want to help families and we want to help children, and we doubled the tax credit, but that's a credit against your tax liability. You work hard, trying to make ends meet. We want to support families. That's the way to do it, while encouraging responsibility, while preventing people from being trapped in dependency and poverty. We want what we saw. We want the highest wage increase in 20 years. Look, they want the things we want in many ways. I'm not trying to pick on Democrats because I say that in my hearing. They just go about it differently. They declared war on poverty in the 60s, and the poverty rate hadn't changed. But we spent $14 trillion. We saw, like I said, millions lifted out of poverty. We had more jobs than people fill them. And the reason why the wages went up and median household income, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is because people were investing, creating jobs, our economy's growing, and people had options. At the end of the day, it's like, keep more of your hard-earned money. I'm for that. But what I really want is for you to have a better opportunity to pursue your dreams and a better life for your family. That's what we did. All this would reverse that in just a stroke of a pen. Okay, with that, Merry Christmas and sweet dreams. And, again, I'm not trying to hate these guys. Some of them are very well intentioned, but as you know, the road to bad places are paved with these kind of intentions. And I've seen the good intention outcomes, and they ain't good. They ain't good. So, questions, comments, thoughts?
So first of all.
Smile, maybe just smile back at me. I don't know. Look like look alive, boys. We're in the fight, man, and we got a chance to win. We got a chance to win.
That was your first comment. You said maybe nothing's going to happen. Do you really feel that this goes nowhere?
Look, Stephanie Murphy jumped ship before we even got out of the port. Because she said, I don't know how we're going to pay for it. I don't have CBO scores. I'm out. Well, that might have been, I think she's being sincere, but that just might be her way to get out from signing her political death warrant, along with 50 others in a competitive district where it turns out some people may have some progressive ideas on social policy, but they don't want more taxes and more inflation on account of more spending, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a sign. Ron Kine got out of a deal where we were forcing small businesses to create, retirement accounts and have this sort of opt-in for people that have 6 employees. I mean, where do you come up with that metric? Look at all the other programs. It's either 100 employees or less as a small business, or 50, or define it as 25. They're like 6. When we were asking the question, where'd you come up with 6? And so Ron Kine said, I'm a small business guy. I don't know how we're going to ask people with 7 employees to create retirement accounts and force, and mandate this where they pay a tax. I mean, it's basically, you talk about the heavy hand. It's very, very much like the Obama sort of mandate where we're finding our people to do that. On top of, again, sidelining labor with these ridiculous unemployment benefits that kept people out of the workforce. So layer after layer after layer, yeah, I think they're starting to look. I've helped lead a debt and deficit concerned members. It's hard to believe that there are any. Maybe it's in name and it's rhetoric only, but Scott Peters from San Diego and we co-chair this caucus. And I'm telling you, those guys, I mean, look what they did with HR 3, the signature drug price reform legislation, which was going to be over $500 billion in pay for. They killed it. 3 of them killed it. It is egg on the face to have a ENC hearing on HR 3 and have 3 Dems say no, and they couldn't get it out of there. They just need enough encouragement, some of these guys, to hold hands and jump and say, Pelosi is not going to be here. She's trying to stuff the turkey as much as she can to have that legacy, knowing that Republicans will not roll back all of those things. I mean, find one that'll take back the refundable tax credit or pick one of the cradle to grave entitlements that will be created. It just won't happen. That's what she's betting on as she rides off in the sunset. Some of these guys want to stay and they want to help their country and they have a career here. And quite frankly, they're the ones I enjoy working with the most, but they're the ones that are going to have to go for us to get the majority. Yeah, I see it. I see it everywhere. Schrader is already dug in. There are several that have talked to it. The Senate side has, the 2 that are already being vocal about it. Can they get 1.5 trillion? Can they get a lot of the tax stuff with less of the sort of entitlement, Green New Deal programs that are in there? That's a possibility. Which ones can we fend off entirely? Which ones might creep back in there, like a stepped-up basis for death tax? I don't think stepped-up basis is going anywhere. I think it stays out of the conversation because even the select revenue, the tax subcommittee chair is opposed to that. And he's an got that ag interest, and that's You know, it's for it's an unfair, un-American tax for all businesses of all kinds, not just family farms, but that's what gets the most attention, I think. So yeah, I think we're getting traction on it. But I mean, I'm running scared every day because I'm from Plainview, Texas, and you know, we're always scared. Somebody's gonna come, you know, put us out of business. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your leadership.
There you go.
Of the Dems, who can we speak with? Who is open to hearing our family messages?
You know, I think you've got a good group of my cohorts on the committee. If you start with the Ways and Means Committee, you know, they're going to toe the line in some respect for a while because that's, you know, that's what they do, and they do it better than we do. But I think you look at that bottom row of folks that came in 16 with me. Panetta, very sensitive, even though I hit back at him pretty hard when he said, you know, we kept the stepped up basis out. We reduced the exemption back to pre-TCJA, but hey, you know, but it's 5 million, you know, people make over that, they ought to pay something, da. Well, we didn't give him a pass on that. And I love Jimmy. He's in my 30 for 30, that caucus. I love Jimmy, but we didn't let him have a pass on that. We just said, you know, we just had the same message on the death tax, and that they're basically raising the death tax. They're still supercharging the death tax. If you cut something in half, then you're supercharging. So we're not going to give up on that. But you've got the likes of Murphy, Panetta, even Swazi. He has to push the SALT thing because he's from New York. I don't know that's an interesting debate. That may be part of the debacle, right? Is that you got the purist progressive wing, and then you got the more moderate pragmatist that would negotiate maybe for a skinny deal so they can get the bipartisan infrastructure and kind of declare like we did the responsible thing, even though all the pay-fors are gimmicks. And it's a huge Green New Deal sort of down payment, if you will. I mean, we're all for stewarding the environment. But the Green New Deal I'm opposed to, and if we want to talk about that, I can talk to you about why I am. But part of our economic strength, right, is not just, you know, there was a time we had the highest taxes in the developed world. We're going back to the highest taxes if this were passed. And yet to have an abundant, affordable supply of energy that fuels our economy actually allowed us to stay in the game. Not to mention we have the best operators, I mean technology, but then you take that off the table and add the tax. Man, how do you even go show up? We're talking about football before we get it. How do you even go out on the field with dignity, with any hope of competing against the likes of China? Really, China's the big economic war that we're in is with China that we talked about with Paul Ryan just before he came over here. So you can't compete when you do that. So I think you've got Scott Peters is your guy. I love Scott. He's the 30 for 30 co-chair with me. We call it 30 for 30, you know, the ESPN deal. That was our only creative contribution since I've been to Congress, as they call it, 30. And we decided not to be a formal caucus so that we didn't have to. We're like skull and bones. We're like a secret society, you know. But it's a great way to still talk and respectfully disagree, but also earnestly try to get to a place that we can agree on some things, especially budget reform, process reform, stuff like debt targets with the glide slope down, no budget, no recess. Like let's do what you guys do in your businesses every day. How do we operate a little more like the American people? But he's a good one. Scott is a good one, and there's just look at that whole 30 for 30 list because that's your list, and then look at the 50. I mean, you got Henry Cuellar, and you got the several that signed the Please Don't Renew Disaster Our Country. Like if we're going to transition, I got more wind energy in my district than 3 times California. You know, don't get me started. I'm a Texan. I will brag about how big our, you know, wind energy prowess is, our renewable, but we're also oil and gas, which is 80% of the world economy consumption. And oh, by the way, 1 billion people in the world are in energy poverty. We could solve that. And we're not going to end the world. I bet my entire career on wherever I go, whatever I do, I will live a pauper's life from this point and resign from Congress if the world ends on account of carbon emissions, ever ends, or even has a meaningful impact other than what is naturally going to happen in cycles. I'm not saying we shouldn't steward it, but Henry Cuellar, Lizzie Fletcher, Colin Allred, and others, mainly Texans, are saying, yeah, let's transition smart. I was for the production tax credit and other things, but don't kill the goose that laid the golden egg and gave us energy independence, right? Like since the 1970s. So that's just a bad idea. It's a bad idea to have our commander-in-chief begging OPEC to produce more of that planet-polluting fossil fuel so that he can squirm off the altar of what you have to sacrifice to go zero net carbon when, you know, in 10 years. It just makes no sense. I'm just saying be reasonable. I'm not saying be, you know, a knuckle dragging caveman like me and just deny that there really is any real crisis there. I think the crisis is right here, right now. I think it's the division in our country. I hate it. There's such disunity. I just hate that it's being stoked on all sides. I love Trump's policies, but I never defended his anytime he was doing things that were unhelpful to unifying our country. He didn't run on as Ronald Reagan, and I didn't expect him to be one, but we need one. We need one. But, you know, the crisis is the inflation. The crisis is 50% of small business can't hire their people back. The crisis is the gas pump and somebody trying to heat their home this winter, and they can't do it because their prices went up because somebody thought we ought to give a tax credit to somebody making $150,000 to buy an electric bicycle. That's the real deal, man. Holyfield. So anyway, yeah, they're still there. You just got to go through that list. Go to the end. Here's what I say. Go to the NRCC top 50 list. It's very political, so I'm just going to tell you. Those are the folks. That's where when we raise money, and I'm telling people, and they say, how do I know I'm going to? Nobody likes giving to the NRCC, and none of my friends back in Texas, you know, they're like, I need to raise this much money. I'm a deputy chair now, so I got to raise all this money. Like, no, I get no extra anything. Like, but I got to go raise this money, and I believe in the cause, so let's go. But I asked them, I say, NRCC, what is that? I said, I don't even know what that means, but I know it means we got to get the majority. We got to stop this radical nonsense, this, you know, freedom compromising, you know, apologize for our prosperity and our leadership and our dominance, and let's get back to doing stuff that raises the votes of everybody. And they say, well, how do I know? You know, I'll give it to you because I kind of like you. You're kind of Texas guy coming here with that Texas, you know, we got more wind. You want to bring, you know, I like that. You know, we'll write you a check. But the NRC says, well, wait a minute here. You don't know that Vicente Gonzalez, who's a good guy, probably one of the guys that could help us. He signed that energy letter too. He's a 1%er. We didn't pay a dime to the person that ran against him, and she got within 1 percentage point. This is in the deep blue Democrat, what we call the Valley, which is South Texas. Turns out the Hispanic communities doesn't want an open border. They want a safe neighborhood. They want job opportunities, and they want freedom. That's why they came here, and why I came here. Some of my descent, I mean, why all immigrants came to this country, but they. Turns out are a little more value aligned, and that movement is happening. Stark County, 300% increase. Zapata, all in on Republican. But you get a messenger that can take this to the people like the gal that got within 1 percentage point of Vicente. So I know where to make those bets. That's what I'm telling them. Well, my ROI to my shareholders, we flipped 10 seats and we held every Republican seat. Everybody hyperventilated over the presidential election. I get it. But you look down ballot, we held every Republican seat in the United States of America. For the first time in a quarter of a century, flipped 10 seats. They got a 4-seat margin. They're having to thread the needle. We may have saved the republic and the free enterprise system as we know it because of the efforts to what that NRCC did to place the bets where we could get the biggest return. So that's what I'm doing now. So that's why I say look at the top 50 because those are the ones. Those are the ones that are worried about signing their political death warrant. And I've told them that because I like a lot of these guys. I sincerely do. And that's why I told them, and maybe I'm not a good NRCC guy because I actually like them and I do business with them. And when the people tell me don't do business with them because we're trying to defeat them, I say, take a hike, Jack. Take a walk. I'm here to help my country. And if somebody's willing to do the right thing, let's go, right? But I told them, if your conscience is being pricked by all the things that we're telling you that's going to happen to this country, the trickle-down effect of the inflation and the wage reduction relative to inflation every month since Biden's been president, and then what you're going to do to wages, depressing them with these taxes. If there's a pit in your stomach, don't sign that warrant. You might survive. History says 25 to 30 of the party in the president, in the White House, in the midterms will flip. So if history repeats itself, we should get 25 naturally. Like if this was just the most moderate Democrat unified agenda we've ever seen, with 0 tax increases and 0 Green New Deals and 0 open borders and 0 embarrassments in Afghanistan and negotiating with terrorists. And if you had none of that, we get 25 to 30. You add Texas and others redistricting, you get about 5 more, and I'm being conservative. You add the radical nature of what they're pushing, some of it to message, which is a horrible thing for the folks walking the plank that are those 50. I don't know. We may get 4. We may break the 2010 record for the biggest historic swing back to, and it's up to us as Republicans too to show compassion, to reach out to communities that may not feel as connected to our party, but do to our policies and our values. That's up to us. I won't take any credit for what we're seeing, especially in the Hispanic community, because I don't think Republicans deserve the credit for it, other than we put some good policies in place and we saw good results and everyone benefited. I would blame it on the radical agenda of the Democrat Party that's been hijacked by the left. You know, God bless them. They're my fellow Americans. I don't tear down AOC and Ilhan Omar and all those, folks that want to radically transform my country. They were elected by the American people. I mean, I respect that. But they are driving the bus, and they are going to drive it right off the cliff for the Democrat Party. What will the Republicans do? I don't know. What will their response be? Anyway, I digress. You got me I'm just drunk. Now I'm drunk. What'd you put in my water bottle? Anyway, I just wanted to throw a bunch of stuff at you in terms of what I'm seeing on the playing field politically. And I think you hit those 50 up. Every one of them, just hit them up, because they are in a very small corner contemplating their careers right now. And good. That's what it's supposed to be, right? It's accountability. That's why my friend Swazi said, we want the laboratories of democracy, the 50 states, laboratories of democracy. I love Tom. He was talking about the SALT cap repeal. I said, well, that's the only democracy left in America that's like rational and functioning, because we don't pay for anything. We don't have any trade-offs or consideration for pay-fors. We don't offset with cuts. We don't raise taxes to pay for all of the things that we do. But States still have to do that. So if you want to raise your taxes on your people in New York, then do it. If they want to buy the policies and the programs, I'm not mad at New York for that. I love my New York friends. That's not how we roll in Texas. Don't ask us to underwrite your appetite for more government, because we gained 4 million people and 2 seats in Congress. Y'all lost seats in Congress. And that's not to make us better or anything like that. It's only to say there are respectfully and relatively 2 different models. There's a limited government and liberty model, and then there's a we want to help everybody. Government's the answer. It's God. It's religion. It's the solution. Everybody. The motive's still good. It's just we're not trying to save the world through government. We're trying to do that at the church house and at the public square and neighbors, loving neighbors. That's how we do it. And there's a balance. There's a safety net there, no question. But for the grace of God. But 2 different worlds. Texas is not perfect, but they're trying to, and I'm not talking about the border chaos. I'm talking about the migration from California and other places.
Illinois.
Just keep that ideology. Illinois. Yeah, I mean, just come one, come all who are, God-fearing, freedom-loving. But if you're not, keep going till you get to Florida, because we just soon, y'all just, keep going, all right? Because we like this little Texas miracle. It's not the miracle. That's the thing. I tell people, it's not a miracle. It's the principles that made America great. It's just freedom. That's all it is. Anyway, man, I feel so much better. This was so the only way this would have been better is if y'all had a couch and I could say all this lying down. We don't have all the answers, but we're, I think, of one accord in fighting back some of the things that we think are going to be not so great for the country. So thank y'all. God bless, and go West Texas.
Thank you.
Okay, Frank is on, and unfortunately he has to leave at 10:55. So Frank, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we can't hear you, so
I'm,
are you on?
I'm-
Okay, we can hear you now. We can hear you now. Okay, Frank, you're on.
Hey, Pat, that's probably the best introduction you've ever given me.
Thank you.
Let's get to, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Can you turn up the volume a little?
I'm going to do something I normally do not do, which is I'm going to go through 15 minutes, Pat, without taking questions. I'm going to see you all later tonight. I'm going to be in my condo, and I'll take whatever questions you have then, so I can get 15 minutes. And I hope this is clear, because I hear an awful lot of noise in the background, so I don't know if you hear me well.
We can hear you fine.
The issue in all of this, it's not what it's, you put forward what we need. The answer is we don't need higher taxes, we need more accountability. I'm asking you to change the focus of your messaging from fighting taxes to actually, why are we even doing this? Why are we raising taxes at all? Why are we not pursuing more efficient, more effective, a more accountable government? You are not, it's going to be very hard to beat the tax argument. And by the way, for the congressman who spoke before, technically he's right, but I've been involved in this since 1994, and I know what it takes to win the majority. And I'm not going to give you this fundraising appeal. I think you need to tell members of Congress that they better have an agenda. They better have a reason why the Democrats should be replaced, other than they should be replaced. The single thing that the public hates right now is not tax increases, it's wasteful Washington spending. How many times have you heard these people itemize what's in Joe Biden's plan? Never. How many times have you heard, where's this money going? Who's getting paid? The reason why Republicans did so well in 2020 is not because they were successful, it's because the Democrats came up with a stupid idea to defund the police. It was the dumbest thing I have ever heard. And all across America, middle class, middle income people who will never be in a room like that and never have a conversation like this looked at the Democrats and say, what are you, nuts? I won't do this. So I'm going to give you some language on taxes, and this is it, and take a photograph of it because we're not sharing all of this, because I do not want to have this land in the hands of Nancy Pelosi and AOC and her people. But this is the best language. All that I say to you is none of this is going to happen. We are not going to stop the people who want to confiscate, and I use that word deliberately. They want to confiscate your earnings, your wealth, your sacrifice, your employment. We are not going to be successful until Republicans get their shit together. I'm sorry, but it's really frustrating to me because I know that's a rah-rah thing. I heard your applause and how happy you are. And that's just a load of crap. It's one of the reasons why I'm in the UK not in Washington, D.C., because I can't take it anymore. You all have been sold a ridiculous bill of goods. You donated all this money to Donald Trump, who claimed he was rich and he's not, who destroyed this idea of a majority of working class and middle class people working together. And he created a country of anger and meanness and division. Not that it didn't exist before, but there's some aspects of this that we can take back. What is our first responsibility? Look at this sheet. Our first responsibility is to protect economic freedom. It is not capitalism. Stop calling it that. Capitalism is about CEOs. Economic freedom is about employees. Capitalism is about profit. Economic freedom is about performance. You earn it, you deserve it. Capitalism is about Wall Street. Economic freedom is about Main Street. Look at the one right above that, a reward for a life well lived rather than punished at death. That is a simple statement about who you are in that room. Or forcing families to sell their businesses just to pay the IRS. It's not pay taxes, it's pay the IRS. I'm asking you to be disciplined on this language. It's easy to say, pay your taxes, and it goes to government services. The moment they think that they're paying the IRS is the moment that they say no. And then that line, we should not punish success in America. It's not that we shouldn't punish wealth, because wealth for a lot of people is a negative, but not punish success. Let me show you the positives and negatives. It's not that there are too many tax brackets, it's that tax dollars are wasted. I know that you all talk about employees losing their jobs because it sounds good. But what we actually found was that family members selling off their businesses. And by the way, it's a generation. These are people who sacrifice. Look at number 2 down there. A generationally owned family business built on hard work. That should be your message from today forward. That's who you're fighting for. A generationally owned family business built on hard work. Please make that change. You're not going to get there by donating money to these politicians. You need them to speak efficiently and effectively about this language. In terms of who are the most supportive, I know we got retailers in there. I know that they're manufacturers and auto dealers as part of this group. You're not the most sympathetic. The most sympathetic are farmers. You know who's in second place? Restaurant owners. People love restaurant owners because it represents to them their local establishment, someone who they know, someone who they appreciate. So the key, by the way, at the bottom one, a lifetime of savings versus a lifetime of success or wealth. You don't punish success, but you don't deny people a lifetime of savings, because savings is positive. I'm so happy to tell you that we now have a complete lexicon for you, even in this messed up era of AOC and Omar and Pelosi and Schumer and all of that. This stuff actually works. I want to show you the numbers behind it. It's not the number of employees or a lot of times you like to say business that represents the American dream. Far better than that. It's 2-to-1 over any other response. This stuff really does work. I'll give you another example. Better than family businesses are small business owners, because now you've personalized it, you've individualized it, and look at what comes in dead last, entrepreneurs. Now, I know that people in that room are all entrepreneurial. I respect you, but the public doesn't. So we got to stop using the language that turns people off. In fact, Pat was on a call with me where we presented to the directors of the Ways and Means Committee, and this stuff has been shared with all the members, and their language in the write-up, in the markup, had changed. The problem is I'm here, not there. The advantage is we got Zoom like this, but members who believe in you and believe in the principle are so eager to be directed. They're so eager for this information. You just got to find the time to actually get it to them. And by the way, for the auto dealers, I'm sorry, but you do come in dead last. I like you, but the rest of the country doesn't choose you up top. In terms of what are they, a $50 million business or $2 million in profit, they think that that's a medium-sized business. Nobody thinks that's a small business. What's the purpose of this? You're a small business owner, but don't define it. Don't talk about what the numbers are. Let people come up to that conclusion themselves. What bothers you most about the current tax code? There's such a difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats want you all to pay more. So that the congressman was correct. They really do want to raise your taxes. The language that works best, our hard-earned tax dollars are being wasted by Washington. So I'll be candid with you. I am trying to shift the attention. I am trying to get people to focus on something different, because I know I can win that debate. Nobody's taxes should be going up. If you continue to waste and you can't demonstrate efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability, all three, efficient, effective, accountable, you can't prove it, then you shouldn't be paying more. But you'll see, because I included Democrats and Republicans, the two of them don't agree on anything, and probably they shouldn't. But that's the difference right now. And in terms of the wealthy are taxed too little and don't pay their fair share, half of Americans think that. So half of Americans are just against you. But the moment that you put it, Washington spends too much and wastes too much among Republicans, it's 4-to-1. But I need to say this, it's important. Pat years ago said to me, we have to get some Democrats. She, at a time when everyone was still pretty partisan, but not as mean, she knew back then that in the end, just having the Republicans in support, if they don't control every lever of government, and even if they do, it's still not enough. You have to get Democrats. I say the same thing right now. You must have Joe Manchin, and you must have Kristen Sinema. You need them, whatever it takes, because you will not pass this on Republicans alone. In your case, you will not stop the negativity with Republicans alone. There has to be some Democrats on this, so be very careful about your language. I love this. In terms of what's most important for Americans to protect, it isn't small business, even though you see that they're respected. It isn't even your nest egg, your life's work, a lifetime of savings. We pulled all of these from members of Congress, and a lifetime of savings does better than all of them by 2-to-1. That's how we know that this works. Another example, which statement do people agree? We wanted to figure out which was the best way to talk about the death tax. The best way of all, by far, death should not be a taxable event. It's easy. By the way, notice it's the shortest statement of all. If we can't deliver this message effectively, then nobody can. And so you're going to start to hear members of Congress say that much, much more often. We got to split here in terms that no family should have to pay the estate tax. They pay it all their lives. Better than that is rewarding. We should reward Americans who work hard, play by the rules. So here's a message to you. Rather than being negative, which is what you see in politics, instead of being negative, no family should ever be positive. We should reward Americans. I've been seeing this in all the polling that we've been doing since this election. Trump was driving a very negative message, who to hate, who to oppose, who to disagree with, why to disagree with it. What we've seen in the last 10 months is a desire for the other side. Why should I support something? Why should I agree with something? They want to know the positive, not the negative. And then we're trying to figure out the best way. I'm going to skip that because it's too close. Do you consider yourself invested in America's future? 2/3 say yes. Look at the line below that. Is America invested in your future? Only 31% say yes. You all ought to be scared out of your minds. 31% and think their country's invested in them. You know what this is going to cause. The negativity and how people are going to respond. Pat, I'm going to skip this because this is to me the most interesting of all, but I promise to do language here. And here we go. In America, gives people a fair chance to get ahead if they work hard and take responsibility. 56% is full of injustice, inequality that holds too many people back. 44%. Almost half of America, as I see them losing everyone to get food. More than half of America are believe that this country is broken. And this has become a problem for us. So since everyone's up getting food, Pat, I'll take it. I got to go. But I'll answer a couple questions tonight. I can even add some of this to you, a couple comments this evening. You're going to love my place. It is filled with history. And I'm actually going to meet the members of the royal family. So that's why I have to leave right now. Pat?
Okay, thank you so much, Frank. Really appreciate it. I know you're on a really tight schedule. So once again, and thank you for sharing your house this evening. And we look forward to seeing you on Zoom there.
Great.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, I think what we should do, Russ and Brandon are going to do a presentation, but let's finish our around the room introductions. Since Russ has just put some in his mouth. Okay, Russ.
If anyone is going to speak, unmute the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, Daniel, you should introduce yourself, please.
I'm Daniel Joseph. I am a tax attorney with the Brownstein team, and I work closely with Russ on managing issues with Brandon as well. Pleasure to be here.
And Mark Warren?
I'm Mark Warren. I'm also with Brownstein, working with Russ and Daniel Joseph and Brendan as well.
I'm Russ Sullivan at Brownstein. Welcome to Brownstein. We're glad you're here. And I worked with Pat for 25 years or so when I was on the Hill working for the Democrats at the Finance Committee. She's the one that educated me about the estate tax when I was working for Max Baucus. And so we're in this battle for the long haul. Skip Fox trained me. Then when I came out to the private sector and was my leader, taught me how to be a real lawyer. I'm a CPA and a tax attorney here at Brownstein.
Appreciate it.
Hi, Mark Lingerfield. I'm a principal at MPI. We're a business valuation firm headquartered up in New Jersey, although we have some other offices around the country as well. About 75% of the work that we do is for either gift or estate tax. The balance is litigation and M&A and some other things like that. But we've been riding this estate tax train for as long as everyone else. So we do some work for some of the folks here in the group, and in particular David, and he thought he'd be MPI would be a good addition to the group. So thanks for having us here, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. MPI is a gold sponsor with Family Enterprise USA. So we're really pleased to have you here, Mark. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Steve, and you should know Steve Wells because you also work for his company.
He does a great job. The firm does a great job. My name is Steve Wells. I'm glad all the lawyers in this room enjoy practicing law. Our family business started because my brother didn't like being a lawyer about 30 years ago. I was a prosecutor. I liked it. But in any event, we started in the restaurant business and the food service business. Our company, American Food Vending, we provide food services to colleges and corporate dining in 23 states. So, thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. And you should mention that you actually ran for Congress.
So that was a mistake.
Skip.
I'm Skip Fox with Wirewoods. I hate to say it, I've been working on this issue for 31 years now with Pat, going back to 1990, but it's been a hell of a ride. And actually a lot of progress has been made. thanks to Pat for strong leadership over this 31 years.
Doesn't feel like it, Skip. It feels like we're going backwards. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Kip Peterson. I'm an attorney with Waycross. We are a large family office representing the owners of Cargill Inc., which is a global agribusiness that many of you may be familiar with. You certainly consume a lot of the products that Cargill makes. My colleagues, Jennifer Cullen and Marlo Jercott, have been active in policy and taxation for many years, and I'm sort of stepping in to help support that. So certainly look forward to meeting all of you and enjoy working together.
Terrific. Thank you for being here, Kip.
I'm Alicia Lumegas Calderon, President and COO of our family business, which is ISIS Solutions, Inc. We operate two businesses in healthcare. One does medical case management in California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And the other one is an online healthcare education company that services healthcare providers nationwide. I'm second generation family management. Took over for my dad in 2018, and I'm also on the board of Family Enterprise USA.
My name's Rob Case. I live in Orange County, California, so it's kind of a nice time to get out here to DC. I am third generation, let me see if I took my notes right, medium-sized company based on hard work and value. So again, it's real estate in 3 states. So, and I represent the family. So it's all of this stuff is very important to us.
Thanks, Rob.
I'm Steve Ellsbury. I'm on the board of Policy and Taxation Group. I run our family office out of Kansas City, Missouri. We were a generationally owned business that liquidated in 2006. I'm a 4th generation to avoid having to pay the IRS a 3rd iteration of the estate tax. Now we're a financial family.
Thanks so much. Did I get everybody? Anybody?
We have Jake Daniger.
Jake.
He's our superstar intern for the fall here at Brown.
Okay. And Darius? He is our technician. He's been awesome. Thank you.
We have Salou as well.
Oh, okay.
He's our law clerk at Brown.
Welcome. Appreciate you being here.
No, I was not in the room earlier when we did introductions, but I know many of you, Brandon Vermont, Squire Patton Boggs.
Well, stand up, Brandon, because you're it for Squire Patton Boggs.
Brandon Vermont, Squire Patton Boggs. We had the privilege of working with Brown Seeds, representing Policy and Taxation Group, met many of you before. Glad to be here today and keep up the good fight.
Who is Brandon has more energy than anyone I've ever met in my lifetime and is the best multitasker on the planet. All right, so Russ, who's up first? Are you up or Brandon up?
Yeah, Brandon's first. I'll keep it brief, everybody. So just a couple of things today. I'm going to talk about some of the opportunities regarding the estate tax in 2021 and 22. As you know, we heard from Congressman Cuellar and also Congressman Arrington. The real vehicle this year for estate tax, really any tax policy changes, is a budget reconciliation package.
So Brandon, I think you should come up here because it's hard to hear, and I think you need to stand up so we can hear you. Do you have slides? I thought you had slides.
I don't. I'm just going to.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
Russ has some slides on the specifics. But,
okay.
As I mentioned, so again, as we heard today, budget reconciliation really is the vehicle for any tax policy, including estate tax policy changes that we'll see enacted potentially this year. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details of those policies because Russ is going to talk through some of the ones that impact family businesses. But just as a highlight, so at the beginning of the year, Russ, myself, and Pat put together a strategy for PATG that focused on a couple of things. Obviously defending against any specific estate tax policy changes that would be negatively impact family business. And beyond that, a couple of other specifics. Obviously, we talked and heard a lot today about defending the step up in basis and not letting that be eliminated, protecting against potential increases in capital gains tax, a potential implementation of a wealth tax. And then obviously, as you all know, for the last several years, in our pursuit of the ultimate goal of estate tax elimination, repeal and elimination, we've been pursuing a separate bill that both Congressman Cuellar and Arrington have co-sponsored, and that's the Estate Tax Rate Reduction Act, which would cut in half the rate of the estate tax from 40% to 20%. So with that strategy in place this year, we've done a couple of different things. First, on the Senate side, as we talked about from a procedural standpoint, for reconciliation, the way that the process works is you must have 50+1 of the Senate Democrats, of the senators, which in this year is the Democratic Senate, to enact legislation. So to do that, we've been pursuing trying to kind of peel off some of the moderate Democrats, focusing largely on Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, as well as Senators Kelly, Hickenlooper, and Warnock. I think as you've heard today, some of the comments suggest that in particular, at least publicly, Senators Manchin and Sinema have been very helpful in terms of kind of limiting the potential costs, which potentially also limits the need for the pay-fors for the legislation. So we've had some success there. You know, again, I won't go into too much of the detail because I know Russ is going to talk about some of the specifics, but I also will say that we have had success in terms of keeping step up out of the House Ways and Means package. You know, there was a letter that went out from, I believe, 12 or 13 House Democrats to leadership, largely a result of the work that we and other groups that we've coordinated with through a bigger organization called Family Business Estate Tax Coalition, which we sit on the board of. That outreach resulted in them kind of reaching to the leadership of the House Ways and Means Committee, and also the House just generally to Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Hoyer, effectively saying, if this is included, we can't get on board. Given the numbers right now in the House with that 12 or 13 and the fact that they can only lose 3 people, you know, the numbers just simply weren't there. So we were able to prevent that from getting in. I think looking forward, again, kind of down the chessboard a little bit, obviously the strategy, some of the items that we focused on in the beginning of the year that I mentioned that were included in our overall strategy may be shifting a little bit based upon what Russ will talk about here in a minute that was of the policies included in the Ways and Means Committee package. Will also be informed by the Senate Finance Committee package when we see what is included in that. And then lastly, I'll just talk a little bit about the estate tax rate reduction bill. Again, I think we've seen success this year. We do now officially have bipartisanship in the House, which is huge. Congressman Cuellar, as he said, common sense, and there's others like him. I think right now the battle really is focused on the defense, obviously, because unfortunately, despite even getting a couple of additional potential co-sponsors on the Democratic side, there's no real vehicle or opportunity for that bill to move this year. But we've talked about this before in terms of the strategy, right? So when we were in tax reform and we were pursuing full repeal, ultimately there just simply were not the votes to get to full repeal. So the fallback became the doubling of the exemption. And the reason that is because there had been a drumbeat from organizations for many years just talking about that as good policy. So we're out there, we're continuing to meet with Democrats that are willing to listen, both moderates, but also those that maybe wouldn't necessarily support us, but that are in key positions like Chairman Neal, to explain the need for this and talk about it so that it's been discussed and kind of resourced well. And then when there's an opportunity, potentially next Congress or down the line, when Republicans are in control and there's an opportunity to do additional tax policy changes, it will have been discussed and again kind of vetted so that we have an opportunity to potentially move that forward. So that's kind of the universe of where we see ourselves this year with regard to estate tax policy specifically. And then maybe Russ, I'll see if there's any questions or comments on that.
Why don't we wait till he's done and we can take him for both of you?
All right. Well, then Russ,
So I just want to comment on the question was asked of Claire, which is, you know, who should we be talking to? Just want to let you know we have focused a lot on Democrats. We have focused on all 13 of those Democrats that signed on to the elimination step up letter. We've also focused on all the problem solvers Congress, both problem solvers caucus, both Republicans and Democrats. So we've been very strategic in terms of who we are talking to, both in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, and I will just say, actually, Pat, to that point, I think again it's been well received. People have been receptive to the issue. I think we have some that are potentially on the hook to sign on. Again, this is just because of the nature of what's being discussed, and this is not under active discussion. Nobody feels a particular pressure or time sensitivity to sign on to the bill. But Jake, who is here this morning, is Congressman Cuellar's chief, and in particular Patrick O'Connor, who is his tax staffer that is writing point on the bill. They've been very, very helpful and engaged. Basically, every meeting that we have arranged between Russ and myself and Pat to meet with House Democrats, they've followed up directly, been in touch, and have continued communication. And there's been some interest expressed in return from the members. So again, making some progress there, but it's been very targeted in terms of, as Pat mentioned, the Problem Solvers Caucus the letter, the people who signed on to the letter opposing step up, and a few others between personal relationships and geographic connections. So.
Okay. Russ, you're on. Want to get your slides up?
Okay,
Ernie.
Darius, pull my slides up, and good luck keeping up with me with the camera here, because I'm a wanderer. So y'all feel free to move around too as I walk around and you can't see. I just can't help myself. So anyway, I'm going to go through what are the actual proposals we're talking about. We have hand copies if you prefer to look at that. If you prefer to look at the screen, that's great. I'll wander up by the screen, because I don't care if they see my head or not. The people on the by video here. So we're going to go through each one of these. I'm going to summarize what it is, and then I'm going to tell you whether it's going to pass or not. And Mark Warren's going to join in with me. He was a little humble. He worked for the Finance Committee. He was Chief Tax Counsel for the Republicans. He worked on the 2017 Act for John Thune and Senate leadership. He worked with the Ways and Means Committee before. He worked at the Bush White House, Treasury Department. So between us and Skip Fox, who knows everything, we can figure out an answer. But unfortunately, we may highlight some things you haven't thought about that may be tax increases. So we'll go through one by one. Fire questions at me as we go. And so first, let's talk about the individual rate increases. So in general, these are effective in 2022, but I'll point out some other ones. First, raising the top rate to 39.6. You've all heard about this. What you may not have focused on is they lowered the threshold, the trigger mechanism to get into that top bracket significantly. For singles, from 538 down to 400,000. Marriage from 646 to 450. So that's sort of a one-shot, either $6,000 or $9,000 tax increase per year, just on lowering the bracket threshold amount. In addition to then raising the rate by 2.6 points. Now we've also got this millionaires tax, which is sort of 5 millionaires tax, 3% that kicks in above 5 million in income. This is the first example of something not 100% clear, but it looks like to me that actually includes capital gains. And so you could have a 3 percentage point increase on your capital gains income in addition to your other income, because it's keyed off modified adjusted gross income. So anyway, of those, I think both of those are likely to pass. The 39.6, there's no opposition among Democrats. And the surtax, we haven't heard much. And if there is opposition to it, what they'll do is they'll just raise the amount. They'll raise the trigger point to 10 million or some point until everybody's satisfied that they're only getting the uber wealthy who can afford to pay.
So is the 3% surtax on corporations or just individual trusts and estates?
Individuals, trusts, and estates.
Individuals
Does not include corporations.
Okay. That's a separate increase. All right. It is 5.5%, 26.5% in the House.
Okay.
Yes.
Applies to pass-through income, so there's no cash coming through, which is income.
Yes.
Exactly. To all individuals, no matter what source of income coming from.
And we'll get to the 199 issue as well, that affects the pass-throughs.
All right, next slide. Capital gains and dividends. Surprisingly, they only went with 3% here, increase to 5%. I thought they were going to go to 28. They said 25 long-term capital gains, applicable incomes, a lower threshold than Biden had proposed. Biden had proposed $1 million. They lowered it to this 400 and 450 amount. It's effective for transactions after September 14th. Here's a grandfather clause, traditional grandfather. If you have a transaction in process, as long as you have a binding written contract and you close the deal before the end of the year. So I think this provision is going to be included in any kind of bill, even a $1.5 trillion package. It might go up from there. So that good question on the effective date. My history tells me the effective date can slip. It depends on the transactions that come to the attention of the members of Congress. And if any one of those Democrats in the Senate or a group of 5 of them think this is a sympathetic back pattern that shouldn't be caught, then they can have the leverage to just move it back. The closer they get to the end of the year before this passes, the more likely they might pick January 1. That's what we did in 2012. Mark's seen that also in his experience. So it's not going to go earlier. Could go later.
Right.
Next slide. Other capital gains items. We have carried interest. provision. It's complicated. We still have to duck through all of it. In general, it's increasing the holding period from 3 to 5 years. On non-real estate trade, business partnership, again, you have to have income over 450,000. There are some other limitations.
And Russ, on the carried interest one, they also expanded the transfer limitation under current law. It's a transfer only to a related party. This applies to any transfer. So getting rid of the carried interest or moving it to another party now would be subject to as a taxable event, regardless of whether it's a related party or not.
Okay. All right, and then the other related capital gains is 1202. I remember back when Senator Lieberman and the Democrats put this in the law as a way to promote investment in small business. They're not eliminating the provision. They're just saying if you got more than $400,000 in income, you can't qualify for the exclusion for that. So what does that do if you already own stock?
It's going to potentially, it will apply to any sales after the date of enactment. So potentially you lose the full amount. It looks like, I think you end up with the 50% amount if you're above those levels.
All right, next slide, IRAs. Lots of limits on IRAs, but traditional and Roth IRAs. So if you've got any investments, your clients have investments here, you need to read this very closely. In general, they're trying to stop the existence and expansion of large IRAs. Of course, we've always had contribution limits to IRAs, but some people have very successful IRAs. They put stock in it that quintupled, increased in value dramatically when they went public, or whatever the situation is. And so they said that for traditional IRAs, no more contributions once the value of all your defined contribution plans, your 401k, your IRAs, your 403bs, whatever, hits $10 million. Same rule for the Roths. Okay? Once you get that point, you can't put any more in. It applies only, this limitation, to taxpayers with AGI greater than 400 and 450. So if somehow you can keep your income below that amount, then the provision wouldn't apply to you. Probably fairly difficult to do. Third, different rule here for traditional IRAs and Roth. There's a distribution requirement. So for traditional IRAs, you got to take out at least 50% of the excess over the $10 million in value from your IRA. And you just follow the regular rules there. Since you had basis contributions in there, apply to that first. You could end up with tax on that increase.
That was a mistake.
The minimum distribution.
Right. I'm sorry, what was the question?
What are you saying, Vincent?
That was a sticking point. We covered this with a few of our clients last week, and the distribution number was something like just asking.
Minimum distribution, the RMD.
So the RMD, there's a very complicated kind of targeting rule to interact between the other part of this that Russ was just getting to, that if you have a Roth IRA, once you get above 20 million, then you have to distribute 100%. And there's a targeting rule in the sense of you have to start with the Roth IRAs, and then you dig back into the more traditional accounts, the IRAs, as well as the 401ks, in order to be able to get to the distribution amount. But the regular RMD is counted against it, so that it's not on top of. At least the way we're reading it is that you get credit for the RMD that you would otherwise be making.
I view this one as Ron Wyden trying to get something related to a wealth tax. You remember he put out that white paper saying he's against deferral. You ought to tax your appreciation every year. It's gone flat. That's not going to pass. Warren's wealth tax is not going to pass. Bernie Sanders' wealth tax. None of those are going to pass. And here he's trying to get at something narrow. IRAs that have been extraordinarily successful, so that you've got more than 10 or 20 million in them. And he's basically trying to do a mark-to-market. He's trying to say you gotta get it out of the IRA. and have your tax consequences, the recognition of it.
But the sleeper here are the next two, because those are restricting what's going into the account, and they apply regardless of the size of the account. So if this were to be enacted, if you were have an investment in, I'm sorry, are we in the right one?
Yeah, next slide.
I'm sorry, the next slide.
The next slide there.
Yeah. If you were to have a private placement, which is the poster child for this with Peter Thiel's account that was leaked through the ProPublica articles, they would basically say that that private placement stock has to be removed from the account, taxable transaction, and if it's not removed from the account or you put it in to begin with, the entire account is disqualified, everything in it.
They're going to go backwards and say if you put that asset in there,
yes,
they're going to deny that it truly is an IRA now, IRA?
Yes. Yeah, you'll disqualify it. It'll be a prohibited transaction to put that type of an investment into an IRA. Same thing with.
But going forward, but not, they can't go backwards and
yes,
say.
they can.
Since you did it.
You'll have 2 years to get everything out of the account.
Wow.
Otherwise, the entire account would be distributed.
Is the date 31 or 21 up here?
31.
31.
Okay.
Right. You'd have a longer time period.
Conversions.
For the conversions, you'd have 2 years to be able to get the disqualified assets out of the account. And then there's a similar rule that prohibits.
Before you get to that, on that no private placement rule, it does not matter what your income is at all.
Right.
It does not matter how much your wealth is at all. There's no 10 million, 20 million threshold. No $400,000 threshold. This is applicable to every American that is doing private placement inside their IRA.
That's right.
So here I think they've overreached. This is kind of like the, estate tax changes with the, well, let's apply the capital gains at death and have a double tax in it. We're already hearing a lot of criticism of this. Do I think something in this realm is going to pass? Probably. But I think it'll be modified. I hope it'll be modified to not be retroactive. I hope that what happens is they just prohibit future contributions, but they allow whatever people got in there, which they did under the law, to survive. But they, at minimum, I think, will drop this provision for low income, prohibiting the private placements somehow. I don't see how it survives the process.
Right. I agree. I think one of the issues is the way it is drafted right now. It's very broad. So there's a big question about, is this a registered security under the SEC definition, which would kick in the accredited investor criteria, or would the state accredited investor type criteria, the blue sky laws, apply as well? And I think the staff didn't realize the way this was drafted, just how broad it is. But I agree with Russ. I think this one could likely end up on the cutting room floor.
What about crypto? Is that swept into this?
Crypto doesn't seem to be swept into this. I wondered for a while, however, IRS has got fairly broad authority. To what extent do they start putting limits on contributions of that type of property? And that's also something, obviously, that has members' attention. So it could be, a modification that comes in, especially with the reporting requirements that they're requiring.
Next slide, net investment income tax expansion. So I'm responsible for this one. I wrote this one back in Obamacare. Left a few loopholes for you. Hope you didn't advantage them for a while, because they're going away. Mostly they're going to say, regardless of whether the taxpayer is materially participating in the trade or business or not, this is generally going to be applicable. We have not heard a lot of opposition to this. I'm a little surprised. And so I think it's likely to be included in the final bill. Raising about $230 billion, got to affect a broad swath of Americans, particularly those that, pass through structures. 199A.
So 199. Yeah. Okay. What they ended up with, unlike what Senator Wyden put out, which would have eliminated the deduction above 400 or 450, and taken some of that money and redistributed it to those below 400 and 450 to ease up on some of the restrictions between qualified businesses and non-qualified businesses and the wage limitation. What Chairman Neal ended up doing is basically just putting a cap on the deduction. So the maximum deduction now for regular business, pass-through businesses would be $500,000. That translates into $2.5 million of qualifying pass-through income on a married joint return. Question?
Isn't the solution all the S corps are just going to convert to C corp?
Yeah, but sometimes it's not that easy to do that, and there's tax consequences to do that. So
I think you're going to see more pressure to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And we looked at this in 2017 with the balance creating 199A. I think if there is a trend for that, you're going to see a resurgence of the undistributed earnings excise tax. So there's some flexibility there. I think something in this range is likely to happen. There's an agricultural aspect of this that they did not address that became quite an issue in 2018. And if that rears its head, it's going to complicate their ability to do something in this space.
So you're really talking about, going from effective 27% rate or 28% rate, you got a 20% deduction under current law. So if you're over the limits,
well into the 40s.
You're well into the 40s. It is a dramatic increase in effective tax rates passed through.
Right.
And are you getting pushback on this, I would hope?
I think there's going to be some pushback. It's slow to emerge.
Really?
Because I think when the Biden proposal came out, there was some opposition, and I thought, but it's going to be dead. And then both Biden and Neal have tried to come up with a different version that might be more acceptable. And it is more acceptable than what Biden proposed. Whether it's acceptable enough to pass, I still wonder.
Well, we need to focus on
more voice needs to be heard. They need to hear more of your voices broadly with the stacking of these. The 39.6, limiting this deduction, the 3.8, and then add on the $5 million surtax.
Well, there are organizations like S Corp and NFIB, right, Brandon? I mean, they should be on this.
They are.
So we want to be on this too. This is really important. Okay.
And then finally, the state tax provisions, I'll hit briefly, and then Skip or Mark and we can dig in. Carving back the exemption amount, it looks like about 6.02 million is the exact amount since the inflation, from previous day does kick in. But that would be the amount. It doesn't go quite all the way back to 5. There's an increase in the special use valuation for farms or in a closely held business, query how that's defined, from 1 million to 11 million. And then we've got the valuation discount carved back that we talked about briefly. And in addition to that, the grantor trust required to be included in the grantor decedent's taxable estate, treat the transactions between them as taxable transactions. Both of those are old proposals, generally, that have been around since Obama years, Clinton years. Some have been subject to proposed regulations, 2704. But now here they're putting these in legislative sphere. I think some of these are going to be included. Question is which ones and how much, and that depends on what happens now.
So can we have clarification on the grantor trust? What I thought is they were trying to get at the intentional defective grantor trust and get those eliminated because there's been some abuses around those, but it's a really important structure for family businesses to use to pass on their businesses. And so Brett was showing me something yesterday that suggests that what they're trying to do is include revocable and irrevocable income from trusts into estates or individual tax returns. Does that make sense to you?
Not on the revocable side.
Really?
I think that the way I read it was that if it's fully revocable, they really can't go into that realm because, like you in California, you need the grantor trust in order to protect against state probate.
Right. Exactly.
But that, as long as there's no restrictions on the revocation, I didn't read it as affecting that. It's where you're trying to shift the ownership over to a deemed owner, somebody other than the grantor, and do transactions with the trust so that they benefit the deemed deemed owner in order to be able to get it out of your state. That's where I think they are.
Well, that's what intentional defective grantor trusts do.
That's right.
Irrevocable trust, but where I think they find abusive is, I think, where the grantor is still kind of in charge of everything. And of course, then is using the grantor's name to pay taxes. I mean, that's part of what you're getting. You've given it away, but yet you're still pulling all the strings on it, and you're using your cash, your income basically, and you pay all the taxes on the trust.
But Skip, do you think this goes past just the intentional defective grantor trust?
You may this affects grantor retained annuity trust, qualified personal residence trust, the spousal lifetime access trust that become very popular as a type, irrevocable defective grantor trust. It's a pretty broad swath against most grantor trusts.
That's what I
A lot
wanted.
of the planning we've been doing to take advantage of the exemption and still be able to benefit the spouse as well.
So what do you guys think? Is this going to stay in there? I mean, this is really, really important.
Well,
What's your
I think
crystal
we
ball?
can gather a little bit from Congressman Cuellar this morning, like not really detail focused on these because he hadn't been hearing a lot about these particular items. Aware of the exemption amount, not really aware of the details.
Right.
So I think we have our work cut out for us if we're going to get these eliminated from the bill.
It's unclear whether they're targeting existing grants. It says there's a carve out for kind of existing things, but it's unclear whether transfers will be treated as contributions. So you've got existing grants paying out, moving things over to the trust, successful grant. That might be a contribution, maybe, all the arguments against. But also when the grant terminates, it's questionable whether the annuity payment, because it's no longer a grant or trust,
right?
Whether that actually triggers a tax that you're trying to get at potentially. So it's necessary.
So to Congressman Cuellar's point, I think, ranking, giving
him
we
priorities.
need to go back in to them and any of the other sympathetic offices to kind of highlight these. One point, I think the small business and the agricultural community was really successful on the stepped up in basis by calling it stepped up in basis and really focusing attention on that. Anything that has a step up in basis kind of taint to it or analogy, can kind of add to that argument. And the second one up there, the special use valuation, to an extent gets at step up in basis, because as you're moving, if you take advantage of it, you're only getting a basis step up to the extent of the reduced amount. So, sorry.
I was just going to ask a question. Is the insurance industry going after this provision too, since it will affect your local life insurance trust?
I'm not.
Anytime a spouse is a beneficiary, it's a grantor trust.
Right.
So the insurer dies, now arguably that life insurance proceeds are includable in the estate, even though they're in the irrevocable life insurance trust.
That's right.
I would think the insurance industry is going nuts.
Yeah, good point. I'll ask him.
Another ally.
Skip, good point.
How do they score these for revenue purposes? I know it's all about raising the rate, really.
There are numbers.
It's an art.
It's not that high.
No, it's a relatively small amount. We haven't seen final scores coming out. How the Joint Committee and their revenue estimators estimate is a little bit of, but it's a whole lot more art than it is science. And it's a lot more of a black box than it is transparent. So they try to estimate basically the incidence of these types of proposal or grantor trusts and all in use today. Compare that against a baseline of what will people do? How will they react? And I think some of these have a larger effect because they think that a lot of people won't be able to react, and this is going to raise a lot more revenue than some of these other smaller ones.
From a political perspective, our opportunity on trimming these is better in the Senate than in the House. So I went and visited with Senator Schumer's tax counsel, Anna Taylor. She used to work for Blanche Lincoln, who actually was a supporter of repealing the estate tax. She said, Russ, we've had 5 senators come to Senator Schumer and say, don't touch the estate tax. You're crazy. We'll get slaughtered for this. Don't do anything. And so query, that was before. I went and lobbied her against the Biden proposal. So I was feeling pretty good then because there had been a lot of press discussion around it, and she seems sympathetic. She seemed to understand the political risk of members who went after something that farmers, ranchers, and small family business owners, were concerned about. I haven't talked to her since the new proposal came out that leaves out, repeal a step-up basis and other items. But at least I have more hope there, honestly, than I do on the House.
So Russ and Mark, on this, it's saying that it's applicable to future trusts, transfers, and transactions only. Because to Skip's point, a lot of people use Slack in 2020, and I know of lots of folks that are going to be doing that for 2021. So are those going to be excluded, and this is just going to be subsequent to December 2021, is what they're saying? Or is that going to impact Slats that everybody's running around setting up?
This is one of those, it's a moving target. This is where they didn't pick the September 13th date to try to lock it in to say, don't do anything after this date, you're on notice. So it's really a hard one to say. I think if you really have a window until the end of the year, and it's something you were going to do otherwise, then maybe there's an argument for doing that. But there's certainly some risk here.
Brad, we're telling clients now, you got to get it done before the end of the year. If you're going to do it, you got to have other considerations. Get it done now.
Yeah.
Well, they feel like they've already given us the win because they didn't go after realization. They didn't go after step up. This is the stuff that is the compromise. Are they really going to take this off?
Well, I think they're getting.
House Democrats, like Representative Thompson's person told us.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't do repeal step up. We're kind of looking at some other things that hopefully won't be as bad.
But the question is how much of it will be included, if any. And I think to that point, we have to push back as well as all these other groups. Otherwise, more we already know. I mean, Congressman Cuellar said, give me your priorities. So I think it's really, really critical because as we've learned, if your voices aren't heard, it's going to be in there.
But you can tailor these. I mean, we all know there are abuses here.
Yeah, I agree. You're right.
Yeah, but something like Brad's taken around since 1990 Tax Reform Act. And they're really into all that. Are they right now?
Right, sure.
Yeah.
These are all aimed at wealth.
Yeah.
And it's nameless and faceless, and it's all a political exercise to try to tax wealth and to say that they're doing that. If this package is coming down in size, then the smaller these are, and the more we can highlight that they're overbroad and that they are not just targeting a specific abuse, then I think it increases the chances of trying to knock them out. The more that you can highlight that this has a stepped up basis issue in it, that's a buzzword that a lot of Democrats are afraid of. Senator Tester has really come out strong in trying to preserve the estate tax issues. I think the other thing is, like with the trusts and all, not talking about it as transferring the business so much as, like what Frank was talking about. This is succession. This is making sure that, that the next generation can take this on, and focusing less on it looking like tax avoidance.
Right.
Or really trying to reduce your estate tax as much as this is business planning. Mm-hmm. We're trying to make sure that we're moving the ownership of the business gradually over, to the next generation. I think that will make it more sympathetic.
Yeah, yeah, and real life stories to prove that, which I think we have some of. Other comments, questions, Russ? Yeah, Ernie.
Yeah, Russ, thanks. Very helpful. I just finished 3 years of selling in the state, and there's two pieces that kind of get, everybody, we all know at this table, but they don't seem to get translated, and I'm not sure they can be. The step up in basis, for example, if we were to, in Vermont, if we were to sell today, right, it's 30% on the cash. And I'd pay basically above my basis. I have cash. Somebody dies. In Vermont, I pay 56%. So we ended on equity. So there's a lot, there's 12 states that have the state tax. I don't hear that discussed a lot, but I'm not looking at 40% or whatever it becomes. I'm looking at 56% open basis. And the step up is insane, because then if I pay the step up, I mean, if I paid the 56% and I sold 6 months later without a step up, I paid the 30. It's like off the chart, and it's hard to sell that. The other piece is that politicians have always sensed that. That's why we went to death tax instead of estate tax. It's in the states, so all they have is cash. And whether you take 40%, 35, or they still going to have a lot of money. I just spent 3 years, and I'm sure all of us at this table, you pay on cattle, on farm equipment, you pay on inventory, or you pay on equity. We had tons of buildings that we were paying a lot of debt on, but we didn't have a lot of cash flow. I had to go in and pay 56% on the equity of the building. What do? You sell it, you refinance it. It's unbelievable. And it's a component that I haven't seen Frank come up with words for us to be able to describe well, but I would tell you that at the heart of this family business, where you don't have inordinate amounts of cash, you have equity, you're paying on equity, and then you fight your government to value. So it's crazy. But I don't think that side of the story gets relayed, and I'm not sure it can even be relayed. But I will tell you that's a story I lived for 3 years.
Your latter point goes to the farm side of it.
Yeah.
That has been brushed aside, I think, inappropriately, having worked for ag members. That, in farmland, you are you're land rich and cash poor. You're exactly the same thing with the equity in the buildings. And, what the Democrats always came back and said to the farmers is, show me a farm that shut down because they had to sell land. Well, they don't, because they do enough planning now to be able to have insurance and also the succession planning to be able to mitigate that potential. But I think picking up on that to say, look, if you don't have, depending on what the circumstances are, and certainly with this pandemic and what you've gone through more kind of recently, being able to liquidate anything, it doesn't mean you have to sell the entire business, but how much how much do we sell off before we jeopardize the operation? And that's, I think, it tends to be viewed as an all or nothing exercise, as opposed to, I'm gonna have to sell off a big chunk in order to be able to to manage this payment just at the state level, let alone at the federal level.
So I think, Ernie, you should write something up on that, because we need these examples. I think it's really, really important, as Mark just said, because they always ask, show me an example, show me an example. And wealth, we are in an anti-wealth climate, and family businesses, unfortunately, are being lumped into wealth. So it's really, really hard to combat it unless we have those stories. We can't just say they do good work.
Well, and timing is everything here. This is what they completely missed. Say you go to refinance, you're in a pandemic, right? And half of your center's vacant, or we're not paying rent for the next 3 months. How do you refinance that? How do you sell it? And then you've got 9 months to do it. There's elements to this that they're absolutely clueless on. Absolutely clueless.
And some of the features or proposals to allow longer periods of time to pay, like in the president's proposal, there was a 15-year period to pay out whatever is owed. Okay, well, that's fine, but it's also.
But then they put
they
put a lien on
That's
you.
it.
I've done it, I've been there, I've seen it. So whatever they come back with as an offset, they virtually cross-collateralize all your property. You can't do squat.
Right.
Sound like
You
I've
have
been
to
there?
pay. You have to pay them back
Okay,
the
you're not-
income
you're
that
not
you're getting
gonna-
taxed on.
You're not gonna convince Bernie Sanders, but we may be able to get you on a Zoom with Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire, some similarities in states.
Oh, Bernie and I have this conversation all the time. It doesn't go anywhere.
Doesn't go anywhere. But maybe we can get you in front of Hassan or Leahy, and maybe we can get some. You're very articulate. That's what we need.
I got a question operationally on the gift tax. If they're gonna have the parity and take it back down, if families have made the total gifts now to 20 million.
Yeah.
And then they're taking it back, I assume, the gift tax return, functionally, you take your lifetime gifts and look at it, they're not gonna charge you a $5 million tax on the excess gift right now.
No, the regulations were changed in order to preserve if you took advantage of the higher amount, the regulations now say that amount above wherever this ends up being is yours. I mean, that's
Will they claw back the index?
No.
So you'll still get index increases?
Yeah, you make the gift now before whatever the effective date is, you're okay.
Yeah.
And you'll get the indexing on the lower amount.
They'll give you the higher exemption.
As you go forward on the lower amount.
But
You just take that.
you won't get because I think won't they count
They'll count, yeah.
that you've already done, so that indexing.
So every time you get an index, that's already gonna be used.
Well, it's for any gift that you make now before the effective date.
Right.
Is grandfathered with respect to the estate tax return when they calculate.
So, but the next time we get an increase in the lower amount, will that already be used?
No, you're starting over.
No,
Starting over.
Well,
That's a good question.
Yeah, but it'll just be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So basically you're saying if I'm making it up, the current limit is 20 million, you used up the full 20 million.
Right, so.
And now it snaps back down to 6
the
and
next
it
time we get
indexes
indexed.
forward.
Right,
I think you've used up your 6.
so you're done.
You're done.
You're done,
You're
yeah.
done.
That's
So
what
that catches up.
Until it goes
So
above.
the index
until it
goes over.
until it indexes above the.
Yeah.
Way after work,
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, so,
right?
great discussion. I want to kind of release the people on the phone, but Darius, if you can put this slide up for me. There's 3 slides here. I want to just go over this before I close the call for the people on the phone. These are Family Enterprise USA sends out 1-question surveys. And we've gotten quite a bit of traction on this. And so what's on the screen right now is one of our questions, which was very simple. The first one we did, if you were asked, if you had an opportunity to speak with your legislator, do you think that they would listen to you? Look at the statistics. 66% said no. That's pretty sad, because I tell people I believe in advocacy and you really have to talk to your legislators. But that's probably why they don't have any, it's a low popularity. So the point is, voters don't believe in their legislators and they don't believe they listen to them. The next slide really talks around the Biden tax policy. And I'm a little disappointed that there's not more kind of disparity between these results, but we asked which Biden tax policy is important to you, and they could answer, number 1 more than once. And so you can see that the highest tax concern they have is reduction of the exemption, the lifetime exemption. So that is, of all the other tax concerns, whether it's, capital gains or income tax or state tax rate, they are more concerned about the exemption amount. A close second, equal second, is elimination of step up and then increase in the rate. So what they're not as concerned about, interesting enough, is income tax and capital gains tax. So I think what's helpful for us is, as we focus on all of these things, it helps us develop our priorities as well. And the last question is really just to get a sense of our family businesses, the last slide. I think this is very powerful. This is what we suspect. but this helps us when we're talking to members of Congress. We all know that family businesses plan their business as a legacy. They plan it for the long term, not only for their families and their employees, but their communities. And to that point, how long has your longest employee been around? 78% of these are 20 or more years. That really speaks to retention and how well family businesses treat their employees. So this is information we need to share with members of Congress. Once again, why family businesses should be perpetuated. And in